Howdy my totally as always tubular gamers, and we're back with, you guessed it, another ranking video. And today we're doing a fun one. Today we're doing a pretty personal one. Today we are going to be ranking all of the Luigi's Mansion games. Yeah, we're doing the rare green Mario ranking here, and we're doing it on his series. His series is very different from his brother, and you know, this series holds a lot of love in my heart. Starting all the way back on the GameCube, this was really Luigi's time to shine by himself. I mean, we did have like Mario is missing, but I'd rather not think about that. This really was the real first time that Luigi set out on his own, got his own game, and got a ton of personality and charm, and really it helped establish Luigi as who he is today. It was even a GameCube launch title, which was a pretty big deal back then, and you know what, I got a ton of love for this game, and it would be many years, but many years later, they'd actually revisit Luigi's Mansion, and we would get Luigi's Mansion 2 Dark Moon for the 3DS, and then, yeah, the series really became a mainstay after that, with us getting the third game on the Switch, and even an arcade game. And so today we're going to be looking at these 4 worst to best. I'm going to stack them all up against each other, just talk about each one of them for a couple minutes, and see how they all are. Have they aged well? Are they still fun? Are they scary? All of that fun stuff. You know how these go. Let me know your favorite down below. Tell me why I'm totally wrong or totally correct. Either way, I'm totally tubular. Like, share, comment, sub. Let's just get right into it. Out of these 4 games, what do I think is the weakest? And so here we have Luigi's Mansion Arcade releasing in the States in 2017, particularly at Dave & Buster's, but I'm pretty sure you can find it in a ton of different arcades now. I played this game a couple times at, yes, Dave & Buster's, and you know, while I don't usually talk about arcade spin-offs, I'm going to talk about it here because Luigi's Mansion Arcade, this game's actually pretty solid. It's actually pretty charming, and just about every time I've seen it, I've sat down and played a session of it because, yeah, it is actually a pretty fun little game. You know, it's got the aesthetic from Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, and it really plays off those ghosts since Luigi's Mansion 3 wasn't out yet. And it reuses a lot of assets, obviously looking a lot better since this isn't a 3DS, but you go to 3 different mansions, you're talking to EGAD, you're sucking up ghosts. It's pretty much what you would expect, obviously, when it comes to its characters and maybe synopsis. It's a lot more bite-sized being an arcade game, but the gameplay is absolutely where this game shines. It is actually pretty fun, and it is somewhat different from the normal light gun shooter. Obviously, it plays a little bit like a light gun shooter, you know, where you're pointing the vacuum, in this case, at the screen, and you're kind of just sucking up ghosts. You've got the flashlights, so you're blinding them, and then you just suck. You can do this up to 2 players, and I always play with a friend. I don't think this game is a ton of fun by yourself. I think it is way more fun when both of you are just trying to suck up all the ghosts. There's a ton of treasure all over the place that you can suck up to get more points. Obviously, the game is on rails, so you're pretty much just moving forward the whole time, and you're just trying to stay alive. The game is kind of tough. I mean, it's an arcade game. It's supposed to eat all your money, so of course you expect it to be tough, but I have beaten all the levels at this point after, you know, years of coming back and playing it and messing around with it. And, you know, again, for an arcade spin-off, this game is pretty solid. If you see it in an arcade, you could put your money in a lot worse things. I'll leave it at that. And so here we have Luigi's Mansion 2 Dark Moon releasing for the 3DS in 2013. I remember when this came out and I went, oh my god, over a decade later, we're actually getting another Luigi's Mansion. Like, wow, okay. I was like, damn. And then I didn't play it. I didn't play it for a very long time, but finally I can come back here and tell you, yeah, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon is a pretty solid game. It is a bit of a departure, actually, from what the original Luigi's Mansion did, but I think it does a number of things that are pretty good. The game sees King Boo escaping his painting after the first game and shattering the Dark Moon, this object which basically is the effect to pacify the ghosts, and then King Boo just exacts his revenge, and so it's up to Luigi to re-establish the Dark Moon, put it all together, find all the parts through the Evergreen Valley, which is a number of mansions, and save everybody again. The story is fine enough. It is a bit different from the first game, and I'll just say the structure of this game is actually totally different. In the original game, it was one big mansion you'd explore. There's a ton to it. Here, you actually go through a number of different mansions. And not only do you go through a couple different mansions, but these mansions have like mission-based levels that focus on completing a number of objectives rather than just exploring around. Despite that though, the core gameplay is actually pretty similar to the original. Despite having the objectives, levels, different mansions, all of that, you're still exploring around these rooms, sucking up ghosts, shining them with the light, finding treasure. And along the way, there's a number of different puzzles that really use all of Luigi's abilities. All of this is, it's pretty similar to the first game. Obviously, the game does a number of new little gimmicks thrown into it, especially ones utilizing the 3DS's abilities. But what we have here is more than solid enough in my opinion. The gameplay absolutely holds up, it still manages to be engaging, and I liked how different all the mansions were from each other. While I personally don't really care much for the structure of this game, I just don't really like the mission structure or how there's a bunch of mansions. I at least like the variety. The variety is nice and they're always mixing things up. The game has a good length to it also, not really overstaying its welcome, and the missions, I can tell they made the missions because this is a 3DS game and it's more bite-sized, but at least they're quick. The game even had a cooperative mode, the Scare Scraper. I never tried this though. I think this still goes online. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. You can't buy the game on the 3DS eShop anymore, but I think the game still goes online, so there is that as well. The presentation was amazing for the 3DS, like, especially if you run this on like an emulator these days. Like, damn, this game actually looks pretty good. However, I will say I don't really care for how the game aesthetically looks in some aspects, particularly the ghosts. I really like the ghost designs of the original game. I liked how they were actually kind of scary and really spooky, and this feels a lot more like Scooby-Doo and just kind of cute and goofy, and you know, it's clear that's the direction the series took, but I'm always going to prefer the original game's design. Now, all in all, I would say Dark Moon is a pretty good game. While I do have my gripes with it, like the structure of the game, the gameplay is more than good enough. It is actually a pretty engaging time, and I think that if you like Luigi's Mansion, maybe you tried 3 and you want to try the other ones, yeah, go ahead and try it. And yes, I'm one of those people who totally thinks this game could benefit from being put on the Switch or whatever Nintendo's next console is. I think it being locked to the 3DS is going to hold it back. Just put it on a new system. And so here we have the latest in the Luigi's Mansion series, Luigi's Mansion 3, releasing in 2019, developed by Next Level Games. Now it really warms my heart to see that Luigi's Mansion is not only still around, but we have a new modern game to play, and it's actually great also. Like the other Luigi's Mansions, this is much more of an action-adventure game rather than your typical Mario affair, complete with platforming and all of that stuff. The plot this time around sees Luigi exploring a haunted hotel and trying to rescue his friends from the ghosts that inhabit it after the group is tricked into visiting it for a vacation by King Boo. And yeah, Luigi's got to stop King Boo, save his friends, and suck up all the ghosts. I think the story's more than solid enough, and I'm gonna give some special props to my main villain, King Boo. They went back to the old King Boo from the original Luigi's Mansion, not that newer looking King Boo. This is like the old scary looking King Boo, and that always made me happy. Now when it comes to playing this game, if you've played any of the other Luigi's Mansions, you're going to feel pretty right at home here. You still play exclusively as Luigi, or now his counterpart Gooigi, exploring rooms one at a time, interacting with everything like an adventure game, tons of money, tons of puzzles, and then a bunch of ghosts to suck up with your poltergeist as well. Now, Luigi's Mansion 3 returns to the first game's more open-ended exploration, design, and progression rather than the mission structure of the second game. With 17 floors to explore and almost all of them having unique themes, so the game never feels stale. The game brings back some of the moves from Dark Moon, like the Dark Light device where you can reveal objects that have become invisible. You can do this new slam where Luigi slams down the ghosts. You also have a plunger that you can now shoot at not only the environments but the ghosts also and pull on them. And then, like I mentioned 30 seconds ago, you have Gooigi, which is basically this doppelganger of Luigi that he can also control, so you can have two Luigis. This does work with multiplayer as well, where the second player can be Gooigi, and a lot of puzzles involve using both Luigis to figure out how to get through them. There's a lot of puzzles in this game, and I think that a lot of them are actually really good. There's nothing too crazy here, nothing you won't really be able to figure out if you sit there for a couple minutes and observe the environment, and I actually really did have a fun time just solving these puzzles, exploring these rooms, finding all the cash, and getting into the encounters. I can say I think the most creative problem solving and most creative puzzles do involve Gooigi, because he can walk across spiked floors, he can go through gaps like vents and grills, and I think that it just creates a really unique dynamic that the other Luigi's Mansions don't have. It really is a solid gameplay loop, and I think that there's a ton of memorable floors and ghosts that you go up against. Sure, it's not the original game, but you still actually have a bunch of memorable moments here, and I think that by the end of the game it does get pretty epic where you're fighting on the roof again. The game's got a pretty good pace to it, especially with all the exploration, and it's got a good length to it. I had a pretty great time playing this game, and then there's actually some multiplayer as well, where you can play together and suck up ghosts, and I'll be real, I never really played much of this. Like, I thought it was alright, but I only played a few hours at most of it. The whole game is in co-op with Luigi, which is fun. So, you know, fun for the whole family. I'll also say the presentation is fantastic in this game. This game does look great. It is one of the best looking Mario games like ever. It has so much style and personality, and the music's actually pretty solid too. And all in all, I really don't have a problem recommending this game if you like the old Luigi's Mansions, or you want to get into Luigi's Mansion, or you just want a solid action adventure game, or you like kind of spooky games but you don't like horror games. Then this is a great entry point. This game is not scary, but it definitely does have a few spooky moments to it. But of course, it is still a very light-hearted adventure. I really enjoyed this game, and I didn't really want it to end. I was like, wow, this is like a modern, nice, fun Luigi's Mansion that reminds me of my childhood when I played the original game, and again, I have no problem recommending it. Go check it out. And so here we have the original Luigi's Mansion, releasing all the way back in like 2001 as a GameCube launch title, and I'll just be 100 with you. This is one of my favorite video games of all time. Like, I played this game back pretty much when it came out, and I loved it. I was in love with this game. I've played through this game so many times when I was a kid and as an adult now. Like, I absolutely adore the original Luigi's Mansion, and it pretty much just was going to be my number one by default. Like, I could go on about this game for like the next 10 minutes. I really do love Luigi's Mansion, the original. It was also released for the 3DS, but I'll be real, it came out when the Switch was already out, and I just was not really interested in playing the 3DS anymore, and I've never tried it. So the game is about Luigi, who wins this mansion, this amazing mansion, for a contest that he forgot he even entered in. Mario gets there before him though, and when Luigi gets there, Mario's nowhere to be found, and a bunch of ghosts are there. King Boo's actually there, but he gets saved by Professor Egad, a new character at the time, and he gets introduced to this poltergeist, this sucking device that is not at all related to Ghostbusters, and so Luigi, the scaredy cat, heads back into the mansion to save his brother Mario and just suck up all the ghosts and defeat King Boo. I love the premise. I love Luigi. This game really made me love Luigi as a character. Like, before, I always knew, you know, Green Mario, he exists, he's Mario's brother, but this game really gave Luigi an identity, a personality, and, you know, some of the other Mario RPGs did it as well, but I really do think it was Luigi's Mansion where Luigi absolutely began to peak as a character, and I love him in this game. I love this game's personality, the charm. I love Luigi when he just talks about stuff, when you examine stuff. His commentary is just so great. Anyway, when it comes to the gameplay, this game does play a bit like a survival horror game. I mean, kind of, but obviously it's a lot more family friendly. The game isn't really scary. It can be spooky, but it's definitely not scary. But it has a number of elements carried over from, say, an adventure game or survival horror game. Obviously, you play as Luigi the entire time. He can't, like, jump or anything, and this is very different from any other kind of Mario game. It sees him going through rooms, it sees him going up against the ghosts where you shine them with your flashlight and then you suck them up, and sucking them up is really all the combat in this game. Sometimes there's some puzzles thrown in for, say, the boss fights, which there's a ton of boss fights for in this game, which I always loved as a kid. And then there's just a lot of puzzles in general. You'll go through a variety of different puzzles to figure out where the next key is to get to the next room. They throw a bunch of different interesting elements in there, like literal elements where you can shoot fire or ice or water, and you can use this to like water plants, you know, light candles, freeze stuff. And there's actually a bunch of interesting puzzles here, and yeah, I actually think the puzzles were more than solid enough. The combat was pretty original for the time, and there's still never really been much like it outside of Luigi's Mansion. And the boss fights, like I said, the boss fights are really good. Obviously, you know, there's a bunch of really easy ones that don't do much, but there's a bunch of awesome boss fights in this game. Really memorable, amazing boss fights that I still can easily recall to this day, and are some of my favorite boss fights in any video game. I could honestly do a ranking video on all the bosses in this game. You let me know down below if that's what you want to see, but I could totally do it here because I really do like almost all of the boss fights. And then there's looking for all the treasure. Now, this was pretty unique for most Mario games outside of like Super Mario Land 2, I guess, and I always really enjoyed it, just finding the treasure, trying to get all the jewels, trying to get all the golden mice, and I've replayed this game tons of times to try to get the highest ranking, to get the best mansion at the end by finding all the treasure, and I've had just a bunch of fun finding all the treasure. I even had the strategy guide back when Nintendo Power put strategy guides out, and it was just about finding all the treasure because I really wanted to find everything. I always thought this game was incredibly replayable thanks to everything I just mentioned. The game isn't too long. It's like 4 or 5 hours, maybe like 6. It's 7 at most if you really take your time and explore. But like, it's really replayable thanks to that length. And I played through it just a ton of times. Like I said, I really do love this game. I love just about everything about this game. I've always found it incredibly charming. The game looked amazing for the time. The game has an absolutely amazing atmosphere. Like, it is superb when it comes to its atmosphere and when it comes to the presentation. The music's great. Luigi's great. I don't really have any complaints with this game, honestly. I mean, I guess you could go at the length, but like I said, it's very replayable. I really got nothing but praise for this one. And you know, maybe it's just my nostalgia. Maybe I have way too much nostalgia for this game, but I'm gonna just be 100 with you again. I really do love this game. You let me know down below what you think isn't good about this game. I'd love to read that because I genuinely can't think of very many criticisms outside of some minor nitpicks I have with the game, like sometimes the controls being a little awkward or some of the lesser boss fights. But seriously, go play Luigi's Mansion if you haven't. It is a fantastic game. It is on the 3DS, but I really do recommend the GameCube version. It's probably pretty pricey, so just go download Dolphin and try it there. Luigi's Mansion, one of my favorite games of all time. This series is great. I do recommend just about all of these games. In fact, no, I recommend all of these games. Anyway, that's it for this video. I'd be going on and on for the next 20 minutes if I didn't stop here. Let me know your favorite down below. Comment bricks if you made it to this part of the video as in what you used to build a house. Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a wonderful night. Bye-bye.